What's going on, everybody? It is officially the off season. We have moved past the Super Bowl, so it's time for us to work towards our dynasty rookie drafts. But more importantly, we're resetting our team. So I wanted to come at you with five current dynasty buys I have. I've gone through, I've pulled some ADPs on these guys, looked at some trades, and I think their value just might be a little bit too low, where there's some room for you to go capitalize and improve your dynasty roster. So I'm going to use the Dynasty Data Lab ADP tracker. We're going to go through some trades, talk some Dynasty Fantasy Football players, but be sure to subscribe to the Face Off Sports Network if you have not already. And let's get straight to it. Well, looking at some big time moves we have going into the offseason, there's going to be lots of free agents. We'll see where these guys end up. Of course, we have the draft. We'll see where, some of these picks that could really impact. I know it's going to be wide receiver heavy. The quarterback class, the running back class is not that great, but there's some tight ends and wide receivers to, of course, look out for. So be sure to check out our other rookie materials here on the Face Off Sports Network. But what I wanted to do was look at the draft board for what Dynasty Data Lab is tracking current ADPs and drafts over the last month and see if there's any names that are trending down that might have a little bit of room for us to get some value out and maybe move some older players, get rid of some more risk, and get some younger guys on our roster. And let's get started with the running back position. And I want to start with Cam Skattebo. I think Cam Skattebo is an interesting player. Currently, his value, I think, is just a little bit too low, and I would be looking to rank him higher. And again, we're going to have the Dynasty Data Lab here. So if you have not and you're a Dynasty manager, I highly recommend using this service. It's pretty helpful. You can check out your rostership. You can look at his availability, what teams he is on, look at current trade values. But without further ado, I think we need to get straight into Cam Skattebo here. He's currently sitting at the 59th pick, ranked RB16 as it stands right now. And I think that looking at his value, it's remained pretty stagnant here around the 601. But what I want to focus on more so is the trade value. When I pulled up the trade value going through some of this, I just thought in my own mind, I think these trades are a little bit too low. Cam Skattebo for RJ Harvey here. I'd much prefer Cam Skattebo being on my roster personally. Of course, you're going to have some personal preference there, but looking at my rankings, I have Skattebo 4 spots higher. So I think there's lots of value you can get there. This Javonte Williams one is interesting down here. I'd be curious with this second pick. If it's an early second, I might favor that Javonte Williams and the second round pick. But if this is the 210, I might look to go Skattebo, get a little bit younger, get an asset that I think can grow in value. Here you see he was moved for 2 first-round picks. I think that might be a little bit rich for me. But again, Tyler Shuck for Cam Skattebo, that's an interesting trade. Of course, we have to keep in mind what the super flex value could mean and what it could do to a trade like this. But in a vacuum, if I have Tyler Shuck where I drafted him as a 3rd-round pick last year, that might give you the opportunity to go and say, hey, I'll take some more value with this young running back who has a chance to really gain in value. I mean, he's 24 years old on the Giants, an ascending offense. Lots of pieces there to like in that offense. I would be willing to pay a first and a second for Cam Skattebo. Again, we have to keep in mind what we're looking at in this draft. I know it's early. I know there's a lot of players for us to go through. We still have to find the landing spots. But what we do know is that there's not really a bunch of running backs that are commanding high draft capital. I'm high on Emmett Johnson. Of course, we've got Love out there. There will probably be one other guy that's going to get good day 2 capital, maybe 2, and those guys are going to shoot up draft boards, but there's not a lot of belief or conviction in this class. Of course, that can change as we move forward, but keep that in mind of if you have the opportunity to make that move, I would be interested in it. I mean, here we have a 27 first. Of course, everyone's going to want those 27 first going into the future, but if I had, the 112, I would just fire it off for Cam Skattebo right now. See if your manager in your league would take it and just see if you can kind of, work your way up. I mean, here we go. Right here, we've got a Cam Skattebo for a 1st-round pick. Right here, Cam Skattebo for a 1st and a 2nd. I would be very intrigued to know what those 2nd-round picks are or where these picks fall. That's the one downside is we don't know where they are, but I do believe that this is value you can go get for Cam Skattebo right now. Of course, he's a younger name, so it might be a little more difficult to get him off the manager, but if you can get that value, get that youth on your roster, I think it's worth looking into. Carrying right along, guys, the next name I wanted to talk about, not necessarily a value when you stare at the board here. It's just more when I was pulling the trades, looking at what happened, it looked like there was some room for us to go and target that. And I want to talk about Drake London. And Drake London, currently the wide receiver 8 over here on ADP Draft Lab. His value has trended up at the 203 today, but prior to that was down towards the 210, 211. So that's some interesting value right there. But again, looking at the trade value, I think is the most interesting. I think if you can find a deal like this one down here, Penix London for 27 first, 26 first, of course, you're getting a super flex quarterback. That's pretty good. London's value, I think, commands something that's going to be more difficult to go get, but people are going to be concerned about that quarterback situation right now. I don't really care because what we know about Drake London is when he gets to play, he's going to be perfectly fine going forward. I mean, I think that he's going to be a player to watch. I mean, he's young enough where he can still grow and still get better in this offense. He's only 24 years old. So I think that Drake London is a perfect go and add player if you're looking for that big time wide receiver 1 to command a role on your fantasy football team. You know, I think when we look at his history of what he's done, it hasn't necessarily been the most stable quarterback play, but that has not stopped him from being a good fantasy producer. And I think that when we take account for what he's had to do with in Atlanta, I think it's pretty good, all things considered. I'm really interested to see what this team does in the draft, if they add any help on offense. Obviously, we're going to have Kyle Pitts on the way out, so that's something to keep in mind. But looking at last year, he finishes the wide receiver 19, 112 targets with 68 catches and 919 yards. Big down year from what he had in the previous year, where he finished as wide receiver 5 with 100 catches and almost 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. It's worth noting that London did only play in 12 games. So he missed a bunch of time and was still a wide receiver 2. If he stays healthy, which his career track shows, he's typically a healthy wide receiver. So I have no room to think that he suddenly won't be. I'm going to chase that youth. I'm going to chase the production. He's the clear one in the offense. They have a run game so they can stay on the field. Gives him opportunity to score more touchdowns. I think he's just a little bit undervalued right now. Again, it's going to be a harder name to buy. He's currently my wide receiver 8. I'd be looking if I was going to go and pay for him right now. I'm going to pay the premium. If I'm a guy that's on the outside looking in, say maybe I have the 108, and I can't get one of those 3 elite wide receivers, then you're stuck. Can you get Boston? You know, can you get Casey Concepcion? Maybe. And maybe those guys are good. Maybe those guys aren't. But I don't think they're to the tier of Drake London. So I would be willing to take my first and add a first for the future if I'm a competing team and go get Drake London. Add another vet on your team that you can get rid of. Maybe take a guy like A.J. Brown and a pick and go get Drake London. You're re-rolling that player. You're getting a player of better value that has more time left. He's going to be a younger player in an offense that could be bad, could be good, but what we know is he's going to produce either way. I mean, his real only down season is when he finishes wide receiver 37 in PPR, where he had 69 catches for 900 yards and only 2 touchdowns. That 2 touchdowns is a big number there. He's had 7 and 9 the last 2 years consecutively. I think he's going to continue to be a player that we need to monitor and we need to go and get if we can on our rosters. Lots of trades here that include Nico Collins, and that's interesting to me. I mean, here we have one where it's Drake London, Woody Marks, and a second for Nico Collins and a second. I'm personally of the preference where I would rather have Drake London over a guy like Nico Collins. Another one right here, Nico Collins, Javonte Williams, and a first for Drake London and Quinshon Judkins. Judkins over Javonte and probably that first. I mean, maybe that's a really early pick. I don't know. But give me London over Nico Collins. I think that's value you can go and get. I mean, there's several trades on here that include a guy like Nico Collins, and I think that's something you can exploit. I mean, here we have one of Drake London, Jalen Coker for Chris Olave and Luther Burden. Probably you want to go the right side here and get the 2 established players, but I don't think that's the wrong idea of saying, hey, I'll give you Chris Olave, let me tier up to Drake London. Because in my opinion, I think that is growth. That is a player I would rather have. And some people are really high on Chris Olave. You see him here. He's currently the wide receiver 12 over on Dynasty Data Lab. And for me personally, I do not have Chris Olave that high. I do think he had a good year. I do think he's improved. But I have him more towards wide receiver 18 currently. And I would be willing to buy him, but I'm not going to go pay the price of, the wide receiver 12 that they're currently asking. That's just a little bit too high for me. But let's continue to carry on. And I want to talk about another player. I'm going to buy the injury dip here. I think this is an interesting opportunity, especially if you're in a tight end premium league. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft has the ability to improve this value. I mean, here we see him. He's going to be currently sitting 58th overall as the tight end 6. I have him currently ranked as the tight end 4 for me in Dynasty. I get he had the injury. I get there's been some ups and downs with him, but when he plays, he's really dang good. Tucker Kraft for 26 first, absolutely take my money. You're not going to get a first or tight end in this draft right here that's going to replace Tucker Kraft. Kenyon Sadiq very well may be very good. Stowers could be good. Lots of positivity in this tight end class, and don't get me wrong, I like it myself as well. But what I know is that this pick right here, if this 26 first is behind the 106, there's an immediate tier break. I think personally you should be looking at getting the 105 where you can get at least one of the big 3 wide receivers from Mendoza, and surely to God not Love, but hey, you never know. So I would be hard pressed to find myself saying, okay, I would rather have the 107, 108, 109, 110, so on and so forth for a guy like Tucker Kraft. I think you're going to get immense value. Again, if this is a tight end premium, I'm willing to pay a first and a second. And I'm willing to pay a good first. I'm not talking about the 110, the 111, the 112. The tight end position is getting better and better. Tucker Kraft has been a player that's continued to develop his game. And if he continues to do that, guys, I think he's someone we're going to want on our fantasy rosters. I mean, looking at what he's done, let's just pull it up, get his stats over here. And I think that, this offense with Jordan Love, I think Love's getting a little bit more consistent. He could certainly do better. But Kraft, had 117 points in just 8 games. He absolutely was going off. 6 touchdowns, almost 500 yards on 32 catches, tons of missed tackles force. He was an absolute force when he had the ball in his hands. I think looking at what he did in his past, let's look down here at year 2024 where he had 163 points, finished as tight end 10, 50 catches, 700 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He has healthy track, 17 games in each of his first 2 years, 8 games just this past year. I think there's room for him to continue to grow and expand in this offense. The wide receivers, there's some question marks there. Romeo Doubs is going to be a free agent, so we'll see where he ends up going. Matthew Golden's going to be going into year 2, so maybe he gets his role down a little bit better. But what I do know is Tucker Kraft is going to be relied on and will be used. His team uses him like crazy. So as long as he's out there, you're not going to find much better production. Here he is, had a 10-target game, 9-target game, 7-target game. You love to see that from a guy. He's 25 years old. I think he's going to be a great player going forward. I love what he can do. I love what he brings to this Packers offense. Again, I just want to show a couple more trades here. Get those up here on the board. Gunnar Helm and a first for Tucker Kraft. Give me Kraft right there. Again, we're in a vacuum. Another first for Tucker Kraft. I'll take Tucker Kraft. Colby Parkinson, you could be buying what he did, but I think you're just wishful thinking there. Terrence Ferguson should continue to grow. Higbee's still there. So Colby Parkinson a first. Good luck to you. Give me Tucker Kraft every single time. These trades I think are just a little bit far-fetched for me. I would be hard-pressed to move Tucker Kraft for some of these deals. Of course, you're going to find some that aren't going to necessarily fit that narrative. But overall, I think Tucker Kraft is an easy buy in Dynasty right now. Buy that injury dip, sell that pitch there if you can. Talk about this team bringing in more offensive talent. Whatever it takes, he's a guy that I'm going to go get on my fantasy football team. But let's talk about the quarterback position here for a second. Let's talk about Cam Ward. Cam Ward was a guy that I think is kind of being sneakily slept on right now. When we look at his ADP, currently sitting at 71 overall down here, quarterback 19. Now, I think that his actual ranking, pretty close to this. I think in my rankings, I have him at quarterback 17, so I'm not too far off from that there. But I just wanted to look at the trades, and when I looked at some of the availability here, Cam Ward for 26 first. I'm shocked. I think that might be a little bit low. If this was a late first, again, you're asking yourself, can you get a quarterback that would replace him? Now, of course, you might say, well, hey, I don't need a quarterback. I can go get something else. But in my mind, I'm wondering, can I replace Cam Ward with a quarterback in this first round? I highly doubt it. I don't think that Ty Simpson, Garrett Nussmeier, whoever it's going to be that's going to be that QB2 that's likely going to be slotted in around this range if they get significant draft capital. That's the important thing to remember. If they get the capital, then that could change everything and they could be more valuable to this point. But as it stands right now, they're not necessarily getting that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about moving a pick to go get one of these quarterbacks. I would rather have a guy like Cam Ward. We look at how he finished last season, and he was playing very, very well. I mean, he went towards the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he only had one pick and I think 7 or 8 touchdowns to close out the year. Fantastic end. Week 18, he has that injury, which certainly kind of derailed some things there. Looking at his stats for the season, I mean, finished as QB 22 overall, 323 completions on 540 attempts, threw for almost 3,200 yards, 15 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Again, like I said, looking at the INTs in this column here, all of those came early. He had 1 interception in week 14. So between week 9 and the close of the season, only 1 interception, had multiple games with 2 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks of the season, including 4 straight. So you saw growth, you saw development from a guy like Cam Ward, and I think he can continue to do that. Let's not forget he was a very highly touted pocket passer. He's got a rocket on his shoulder. He's got an elite RPO read game. He can absolutely diagnose coverage. And I think him pairing with Daboll is going to be really, really interesting. What we know about Daboll is when he was with the Giants, they were making heavy moves to try and get up to that first pick to get Cam Ward. Ultimately, they were denied. He then was pushing for, hey, let's go get Jackson Dart. I think he can work with him. And guess what he did? He did exactly that. Now, transition, he comes to the offseason where he's fired and he's looking for another job. And what does he do? He gets the job with Cam Ward. Very interesting to me. I think that gives opportunity for him to do something with Cam Ward. Again, 71st player overall. I think there's value there. Going to throw this back on the screen here so we can look at some of these trades. First one right here, DeAndre Swift and Wan'Dale Robinson. I like Wan'Dale. I think he's a good piece to have in Dynasty, but to me, this feels like 2 quarters for $1, man. I love to say that. I don't want to trade, nickels and pennies for $1. I want to go dollar for dollar if I'm doing these trades. And to me, it feels like you're losing value here. CJ Stroud's interesting, just considering that we're selling at a point where his value might be at its lowest. We'll see if he can bounce back. I'm intrigued. Jackson Dart for Cam Ward in the first. Interesting team if you're rebuilding. Cam Ward, 2 firsts for what's likely, I'm guessing, probably the 101, 102, and a second-round pick. I love that deal. If I'm rebuilding, I go get a young quarterback that's going to grow, get 2 first-round picks in a 2027 class that we believe to be loaded. So that's a good deal there. Jackson Dart for Waddle, Monty, and Cam Ward. You get some depth. You get some value if this is a competing team. Yeah, if you're rebuilding, I can see it. There's some value there. Jacoby Myers and Sam Darnold. That's interesting. Sam Darnold was the guy we were talking about selling earlier in the offseason. Obviously, he comes off the Super Bowl win, so congrats to them. But I do think that Sam Darnold might be someone I would be looking to move off of or capitalize maybe more than anything, given the fact that they won the Super Bowl. Lots of name value right now associated with that. Chase Brown in a second for Cam Ward. Interesting. Curious what that second-round pick is. If you needed a guy like Chase Brown, that can certainly impact things. But again, when you just look at this, it looks to me like Cam Ward might be someone worth checking on. I mean, if you're a competing team and you've got 2 quarterbacks, or maybe you just need a third one that's kind of hey, maybe I take my shot, get a guy that's young, get some youth, get some talent on my team, I would go check in. There's value to be made there. He could easily pay dividends in what he can produce for your fantasy football team. I mean, we're not far off from when we've seen a guy like, Bryce Young absolutely making his value go up with what he did during the season, and he didn't necessarily play that well. If Cam Ward walks away with this draft, and just imagine they get a guy like Carnell Tate, maybe a Mekhi Lemon, one of these big wide receivers, even if they take a guy in the second round, it could vastly improve what we're seeing. I mean, we're not far off from when Jacoby Myers joined this Jaguars team and really changed that roster. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it just takes one guy to kind of help flip a room and kind of really build some momentum going forward. So I would be looking to check in on Cam Ward. I think there's value there that you can go and exploit and get a little bit better. But let's close out with one more heavy hitter here, and let's talk about a guy, again, probably appropriately ranked on here, but when I was looking at the trades, it was just interesting to me. TreVeyon Henderson, a lot of people are going to be concerned. What about his usage? What happened there? He's currently sitting as the 34th player overall. Round or running back 8 here, I think there is value to be had for TreVeyon Henderson. In my opinion, I think it's just a little bit too low. Look at this here. He's tracking down over the last month, almost a full round below, actually over a full round below where he was before at the beginning of January. A lot of this is going to be attributed to what he was doing in the playoffs. And when we see how his usage was just so limited, I get it. But what I do know is he's an explosive playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands. So I think he's someone that we should be looking into to see what the dynasty community is currently valuing him at. 180 rushing attempts on the season, almost 1,000 yards, had 9 touchdowns, lots of big play touchdowns there too. So let's keep that in mind. The receiving work leaves a little bit desired, 35 catches, 212 yards, 21 yards, But again, 23 years old. I love the youth there at this position. Ramondre Stevenson, I'm not too worried about what he's going to be. If he stays and he's part of this offense, it's eventually going to transition to TreVeyon. This team knows that he's going to have to get more and more entrenched in this game. We talk about it a lot in the offseason that you can't necessarily take for granted how these teams are going to work the rookie running back into position. They're not necessarily all going to get a full workload. We talked about it with Genty this past season where people were drafting him at the back end of the first round of redraft, and we said that's way too high. Running back 4 or 5, you don't really want to do that. He's going to finish more around that 10-12 range. And what did he do? He finished just like that. Because you know who else did that? Bijan, Gibbs. Those guys didn't finish in that top 5 range. It takes a little bit of time. And he finishes 21. And again, when we step back and we look at his percentages from the beginning of the year, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games out of the first 8 where he was below 40% of the snaps. Multiple of those are in the 30s, one's in the teens, one's in the 20s. I think that this is something that's going to transition to more and more. We saw from week 9 on, he jumped to 75, 84, 88, 65. We saw him get more and more burn. And also in those weeks, we saw him get more opportunities where he was getting double-digit opportunities each game. That's going to carry over, guys. So I think that's something to use. If you can go get him for someone that's down on this Patriots line, down on this Patriots offense, or down on on Henderson's usage, absolutely go and capitalize on that. Looking at the trades, let's pull those up and see if we can find anything that is interesting there. Let me get the tab back up here. All right, let's get to it right here. So we've got a first, a third, and Henderson for a first. I'm imagining this is probably an early pick, maybe the 101. That might be a little rich for me, but Skattebo in a second for Henderson in a third. I'd take TreVeyon Henderson there. I'll be honest. A lot of people are going to take Cam Skattebo, and I know I was talking about how he's a buy, but I'd rather have TreVeyon Henderson in that situation. Tucker Kraft, we were just talking about him a few minutes ago, and a second-round pick for TreVeyon Henderson. You can't find a bell cow running back. You might want to go take the swing on a guy like TreVeyon Henderson. That's an interesting move for me. Rashee Rice, I would definitely be willing to move off of Rashee Rice and go get a guy like TreVeyon Henderson here. Let's keep going on here. Spencer Rattler for TreVeyon Henderson. There's no way that's real. I'd be dying to know who did that trade, and I'd be really, really upset if I was in that league. Certainly something that should get appealed. First and a second for TreVeyon and a fourth. So just some interesting value here for TreVeyon Henderson. I think that if we're stepping back and you said, hey, Matt, what's his pick value worth? I'd be willing to give you 2 first right now. If I had, the 108 and maybe the 112, the 106 and the 109, I'd probably say give you those. I'll give you those. You give me an established running back that I know can do it, that is young, has explosive playmaking ability, and is going to work into a role. This Patriots team will get better. Yes, they struggled in the Super Bowl. Yes, the offense was terrible in the playoffs. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say that Drake May was bad. But what I do know is that Ramondre Stevenson is not the answer. He is not going to solve the problems of this offense. TreVeyon Henderson can absolutely help solve those problems. So TreVeyon is a name that I would go check in on, see if your league mate would be willing to move him and go and make a deal. But if you have any trade questions or a player you think that we should talk about, throw them in the comments. We'll come back and we will talk about them. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe to the Face Off Sports Network. All sorts of content coming out, especially rookie stuff. So stay tuned for that. You can check out the Discord. It is free. The link is in the description. Go join it. Come talk to us. Talk to the community. We'd love to have you in there. And as always, you can check out our Patreon. Link is in the description as well. You can get access to my Dynasty rankings as well as the other rankings for here for the Face Off Sports Network. And of course, that much needed rookie tutorial, rookie tier material that we're going to be putting out. So all sorts of things here with the Face Off Sports Network. But until then, we'll catch you the next